Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is number 347, Gather the Spirit, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you and stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this life appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love, conscious refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in know, drawn by the moon, fed by the sun. Winter to spring, summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Grace Preuss, a member of the Worship Committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the Worship Committee you will hear from include Alec Peck, our music coordinator, as well as today's speaker, who will be reading our sermon. And he is also filling in today for Adam Wedeking, who usually monitors our visual and online connections, and Kate Lewicki, who is in charge of our sound system. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. We welcome all of you to our service and this growing, journeying community. We welcome those of you who are searching for a spiritual home where you can belong, where we can find a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. Thank you again for joining us today. On April 3rd, the California Department of Public Health ended masking and vaccination requirements in high-risk settings. However, we encourage you to exercise personal choice on this matter according to your own judgment. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements we would like to share. We will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is also available on our website. Congregational meeting. The semi-annual UUCR congregational meeting will be held in the sanctuary today at 12:30 p.m. A new board will be elected and a financial report will be given. All members are welcome to attend. Our June Sunday luncheon will be held between the service and the congregational meeting. Sandwiches will be served and contributions are appreciated and will be donated to the church fund. There will be a summer service time change beginning July. Please be aware that Sunday services will begin 1 hour earlier than we are used to at 9 a.m. starting July 2nd for the months of July and August. That concludes our announcements for today. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. You are welcome to read with me the covenant of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Today, UUCR member Alec Peck will be reading a sermon written by Reverend Gary Kowalski. Reverend Gary Kowalski serves the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Taos, New Mexico, and is author of Science and the Search for God. A graduate of Harvard College, Gary received his Master's of Divinity from Harvard Divinity School, where he was also a Merrill Fellow. He has served congregations from New England to Kentucky and from the Northwest to North Carolina. Reverend Kowalski is the author of numerous books on spirituality, animals, history, and science. You can visit his website at www.kowalskibooks.com. Our sermon today is entitled, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? How do we define wealth? Does it consist in how much we are able to accumulate and possess? Or is wealth better measured by how we feel we can afford to share? How does this translate into our participation in the UU community? If our connection to our liberal faith is to grow into something more rewarding, it may be fitting to adopt the mindset of investors or co-owners that have a joint share in the success of the enterprise, rather than the consumer mindset that assesses only the value of personal gain. Today's service is centered on the topic of stewardship. Stewardship is defined as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. As members and supporters of this church, we are all stewards of this sacred space, where we gather regularly for community, fellowship, spiritual guidance, and connection. As we listen to the words spoken today, let's all reflect on how much this spiritual community means to each one of us, and the ways we can personally contribute to supporting and sustaining this valuable sanctuary during these increasingly challenging times. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and an opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be a part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Now we have our own chalice lighting, and today's reading for the chalice lighting is called Soul Fire by Anastasie Briroche. As we light this flame of hope, may our congregation become a kaleidoscope of souls and people. In the presence of this flame, in me, in you, in us, is an invitation to sit at the table. May we tend our soul fire through these challenging and trying times to open the hearts and minds of all those who enter our doors. Thank you, Bill. Our next segment is greeting our guests. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic up here by the pulpit and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. Please be aware that you will be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online. Do we have any church members who would like to volunteer today? We're volunteering other people now. Who'd like to give us an example? Miss Sandra? Thank you, Miss Sandra. We're making her walk all the way. Thank you, Sandra. Please step forward to the mic, tell us your name, how long you've been here, and how you found out about our church.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Verhagen. I've been here for many, many years, and I found this church by accident. I was looking for another speaker, and I couldn't find it, and I thought this was the address, and I came in, and I liked what Matthew had to say, so I stayed.
So we're glad she came to the wrong church. All right. So that's how it's done. If you are new here, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up to the mic.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Alan Ridley, and I came here in 1955 when my parents kidnapped me from my home in Minnesota, where I was very happy, and they brought me kicking and screaming to California. But I found that at least the weather was a little bit warmer here. Mm-hmm. But anyway, but they took me to the Methodist church. And so when I became of age in high school, about 18, I had a friend who was a member of this church, Chuck Tobin, who sang Jumpin' Jack Flash right here in this stage. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I kind of became a Unitarian. But now I've kind of become a Buddhist. But anyway, I'm still here and glad to be here. And thank you very much for
Thank you.
listening.
Anyone else in the audience who'd like to introduce themselves? Any new friends? Last chance. All right. Okay, for any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you are here, and leave your contact information if you'd like to know about any upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Our hymn now is number 1020, Wo Ya Ya, from the Teal hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand in body and spirit and join us in singing number 1020, Wo Ya Ya.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We will get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oy-ya-ya, 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 oy-ya-ya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We will get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oy-ya-ya, 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 oy-ya-ya.
This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may also contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as on the church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater's grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. We also have Amazon cards available as well. You get the full value of your purchases, and the church receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe this Sunday for the cards, or you can also contact Robert Brown in our church office during the week if you wish to purchase them. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? And if there are any hygiene or food products, we will also come by to collect those as well. Thank you. Our next hymn is number 402, From You I Receive, from the Gray Hymnal. Please feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you and stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive.
Our meditation today is The Church Has Left the Building by Margaret Weiss. The church is not a place, it is a people. The church is not only a steeple above the tree line, streets, and cars. Rather, it is a people proclaiming to the world that we are here for the work of healing and of justice. The church is not walls built stone upon stone, held together by mortar, but rather person, linked with person, linked with person. All ages and genders and abilities. A community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. The church is not just a set of doors open on Sunday morning, but the commitment day after day and moment after moment of our hearts creaking open the doors of welcome to the possibility of new experience and radical welcome. The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts. Gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us, together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it. Now let us pause for a moment of silence and reflection. Now I would like to introduce Alec Peck, who will be reading the sermon, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? These are the words written by Reverend Gary Kowalski. Please note that the sermon does not necessarily reflect the views of the reader. Alec?
Thank you, Grace. First, I want to mention there is a contemporary composer named John Cage, who some people may have heard of because of his song 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is in some ways a meditation on silence, because the piece is not meant to be played tacitly by the musician, and everyone sits quietly and listens. And part of the point is that even when everyone sits quietly and attentively, there's still noise all around you. And in some way, that is also a piece of music, of just being in the room and the natural sounds of existing. But let us move on to the sermon. First of all, yes, so thank you for the introduction. And somebody closed it. Oh, well, don't worry, I've got it up here. Okay, so as mentioned, this is written by Reverend Gary Kowalski, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Fantasies sometimes reveal undisclosed information about ourselves, our hidden phobias, unspoken desires, and unexamined motives. And group fantasies say much about our culture, our society's real values, as opposed to the ideals that receive mainly lip service. Mainly, that's why I find myself occasionally watching popular TV quiz shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Partly, I tune in for the same reason 18 million other viewers do. I like to match my wits against the contestants to see if I can answer the tough questions like, what is the capital of Australia? I'll give you a hint. It's not Sydney or Melbourne. And to groan when other players miss the easy ones. In the title of a 1950s Chuck Berry song, what classical composer is asked to roll over? The questions are harder than you expect, but not impossibly hard, so that any one of us might imagine ourselves sitting in the contestant's seat, listening to Regis ask, is that your final answer? Wondering whether we have what it takes to win the $1 million. And who hasn't at one time or another entertained a fantasy of inheriting wealth and riches? But I can enjoy the show on one level. I find it troubling on another. What accounts for the fanatical high rates of that the program receives? And why has it spun off a host of imitations, from Greed to Who Wants to Marry a Multimillionaire, all of which feature the drawing card of quick money with no real expenditure of effort? How is it that so many Americans' fondest dreams seem to be winning the lottery? Why has gambling become a national obsession so that people now spend more money in casinos than they do on all other forms of entertainment, including sports, movies, and the music industry? What accounts for the explosive growth of day trading in the stock market? Expect that hordes of people think that they can make a quick dollar without any of the patience or self-discipline required for more traditional investors. The phenomenal popularity of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire seems to be based on the fact that it struck a nerve. Its Nielsen's have rocketed it because so many people have begun to lose the ability to distinguish between fantasy and reality. More and more seem to believe that the good life is within easy reach, that the good life being defined solely in material values, and the way to get there being mostly a matter of luck and timing rather than hard work and perseverance. Truly, that is a delusion. Now, there may be a grain of truth in there somewhere. I don't want to say that money is not important, or that the fickle finger of fate doesn't play a role in determining who gets riches and who doesn't. J. Paul Getty, when asked to share his own personal formula for success, gave the advice to get up early, work hard, and strike oil. There are racial disparities in the distribution of wealth that need to be addressed, and men earn far more than women for doing the same jobs. But to a surprising extent, the people who wind up wealthy in America do not do so because they happen to be born white or male, but because they had a silver spoon in their mouth. And it's not always because they happen to know someone who invented Velcro or sang backup for the Supremes. When you look at the social and economic statistics, you find that some people who really are millionaires have some very simple things in common. They save their money and invest it over time. That is, that they have the opportunity to invest their extra money. They don't have flashy lifestyles or buy expensive clothings or luxury cars. Most of them went to public school, not prep schools or private academies. Most never inherited a dime from their parents, and most expect to work hard somewhere between 45 and 55 hours per week. These are all among the findings of Thomas Stanley and William Danko from their book, The Millionaire Next Door, which examines the question of who really has money in the United States. They dispel the illusion that millionaires live more extravagantly than the rest of us. Most live far more frugally than their middle-class neighbors, so they claim, and the author turns up some surprising data regarding ethnicity. You might not guess that the Turks or Palestinians are more than twice as likely to have $1 million as the average American household, or that the average American of Russian descent has a better chance of hitting the jackpot than a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But that's what the numbers show. Many millionaires are first-generation immigrants to this country. It's their children and grandchildren, the second and third generation, who are more likely to fritter the money away as they become acculturated into a shop till you drop society. You might ask the question then, can anybody get rich? If they work hard, live simply, and save and invest, well, then I'm sure I'm not sure I'd go that far. But that would seem to be the implication if you consider the life of Osceola McCarty of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, who made headlines in 1995 when she donated $150,000 to the start of a scholarship fund for African-American students in financial need. Miss McCarty, who passed away last year, was 88 years old at the time that she signed a charitable trust transferring her wealth to the state university at the time of her death. She started work in 6th grade when she had to drop out of school to take care of her sick aunt, and spent the next 75 years taking in other people's laundry, starting out at $1.50 a bundle. Miss McCarty, who never owned a car and was in the habit of walking wherever she needed to go, noted that, quote, the secret to building a fortune is compounding interest. It's not the ones that make the big money, but the ones you know how to save who will get ahead. She recalls that, quote, I started saving when I was a little girl just to have candy money. When I got grown, I started to saving for my future. I'd go to the bank once a month, hold out just enough to cover my expenses, and put the rest into my savings account. Every month, I'd save the money and put it away. I was consistent. Although nowadays I've heard that placing your money in a savings account is a pretty poor financial advice. But moving on, later she began putting money into mutual funds and CDs. There's that investing coming back. But it was the consistency that paid off. And her generosity inspired matching gifts that tripled the size of her bequest, creating a scholarship fund of almost $500,000, directly inspiring media mogul Ted Turner to donate $1 billion to the United Nations. Some of McCarty's tips for getting rich: I don't like to waste. I keep everything, clothes, furniture, housewares, until it wears out. Usefulness often outlasts style. I don't buy clothes very often, but when I do, I try to find something on sale. I'll spend a little more for something of higher quality if I have the money to spare. I think a Christmas savings account is a good idea. Every year I save and prepare to spend that money. It's crazy the way some people will go into debt at that time of year. Credit cards, she says, are okay for some people, but I wouldn't go for one. I try not to spend money that I don't have buying what I can't afford. Of course, Miss McCarty also needs a reason to save. Part of her willingness was self-interest. A smart person plans for the future, she said. You never know what kind of emergency will come up and can't rely on the government to meet all your needs. You have to take responsibility for yourself. Part of the reason she was such a good steward of her money was Part of the reason she was such a good steward of her money was disinterested, however. She wanted to give other people opportunities that she never had. I can't do everything, she observed, but I can do something to help somebody. And what I can do, I will do. And I wish I could do more. I wonder how many of us are as rich as Osceola McCarty. Rich not only in monetary terms, but also in spiritual terms. It raises the question of how we define wealth. Does it consist of how much we are able to accumulate and possess, or is wealth better measured by how much we feel we can afford to share? I suspect that many of us struggle with the tension between the desire to do good and the desire to do well. Part of what we want from life is comfort, security, independence. But another important part of what we want is the satisfaction that comes from sharing values, working together in a common cause, belonging to something larger and more lasting than ourselves. 2 university professors who recently released the results of an investigation into what make people happy found, not surprisingly, that money was an important indicator in determining whether people describe themselves as very happy, somewhat happy, or fairly unhappy, but only up to a certain level of money. But money was not nearly as significant as other factors, like having a good marriage, and only one among the assortment of other predictors, including being part of a meaningful religious community. Now, being part of a religious community, like being part of a good marriage, demands a set of attitudes and expectations on the parts of the participants. If we approach the relationship with the mentality of, what is in it for me, we are almost certainly setting ourselves up for disappointment and failure. But unfortunately, that attitude is all too common in our cash and carry society. People frequently come through our doors of our meeting house, bringing with them the mindset of the marketplace as church shoppers or consumers. They evaluate their experience on Sunday morning by the same criteria that we might use to judge the worth of other competing attractions. And what they give to support the congregation is based on what they might expect to pay for similar services for seemingly similar retailers. If a cup of coffee costs $1 at Starbucks, then we might figure that it's worth $1 to have a coffee at the social hour following the service. If babysitting averages $5 an hour, they might reason that a $10 bill in the collection plate should cover the costs of bringing a child to this church school with another in the nursery. And from one point of view, that's a good way to calculate the value of what you get from a congregation. But people who come to Unitarian Universalism seeking spiritual goods are likely to be disappointed so long as they have the outlook of consumers in search of material goods. If our connection to our liberal faith is to grow into something more rewarding, we have to give up our consumer mindset and begin to think of ourselves instead as shareholders, investors, and co-owners in what happens in our church. Just as the parties in marriage see themselves as partners rather than competitors, with a joint share in the success of the enterprise, Making the transition from consumers to investors involves an emotional shift, not just an emotional shift, but also a financial one. At that point, what people pledge to support their religious community is likely to increase significantly, but the profit, the payback, the dividends also rise dramatically. Many years ago, Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi made a list of what he called, quote, the 7 sins of the modern world. High on the list were these 2: wealth without work and religion without sacrifice. I tend to agree with Gandhi, and I think we do suffer from the delusion that we can get something for nothing. I think our get-rich-quick economy tends to denigrate the value of struggle, commitment, sacrifice, and merit. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I agree with Osceola McCarty, who said, quote, hard work gives life meaning. Everyone needs to work hard at something to feel good about themselves. Every job can be done well, and every day has its satisfactions, unquote. TV game shows may promise you instant wealth as the key to happiness, but I don't really believe that promise. The question for me is, what can we promise to one another? And I think the answer is that we can promise each other honest work. The work of raising caring children is in an often uncaring world. The work of trying to live with integrity in a world filled with strife, rife with shame and deception. The work of building a community where each person has dignity because of who they are, not because of what they earn or how much they own or what they can give to us. Imagining that you're going to win the lottery, or that it would solve all of your problems, imagining that you're going to win the lottery, or that it would solve all your problems, even if you did, really is far-fetched. Winning the sweepstakes is a 1 in 10 million, to be generous. Marrying a multimillionaire may be what producers call, quote, reality-based programming, but that's TV reality. It doesn't apply really to you or me. But it's not far-fetched at all to believe that somebody, each one of us, can have a life that means something, that is rich in love and makes a difference. So what I'm inviting you to do is not to buy into a fantasy, but consider investing in a dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. A few weeks ago, we delivered a sermon titled Holding Fast. We were asked to look inside of ourselves and find what was worth holding on to. That is not only true of us as individuals, but also as a congregation. What is the dream that we, as a congregation, are ready to invest in? How much courage will we, as a congregation, show in pursuing that dream? We need to trust in things that are outside of ourselves in order to sustain our being. Together, we are greater than each of us alone. We need each of us in this congregation, and we need each of us to do our part, maybe more than our part, in order to hold fast to the dream that has been part of this church for 142 years. If we as a congregation don't step up and support that dream, who will? Our closing hymn today is number 211, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand in body or in spirit and join us in singing number 211, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder.
We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing on. Every rung goes higher and higher. Every rung goes higher and higher. Every rung goes higher and higher. We are climbing on. If I stumble, will you help me? If I stumble, will you help me? If I stumble, will you help me? We are climbing on. Though the road is steep and rugged, though the road is steep and rugged, though the road is steep and rugged, we are climbing on.
And now, may the blessings of life be upon us and upon this congregation. May the memories we gather here give us hope for the future. May the love that we share bring strength and joy to our hearts. And the peace of this community be with us until we meet again. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Alec, for sharing your valuable time and today's reading and multitasking between 3 different things for us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to hearing from you again. For those of you who would like to stay in the sanctuary for 10 to 15 minutes to share some discussion or observations from the service, please remain in the sanctuary or online, and be aware that these comments will be posted online. For the rest of you, you are now welcome to adjourn into the parish hall, where sandwiches will be served before the congregational meeting at 12:30. Now, would anyone like to come up and share their thoughts on today's sermon? Walt?
I used to feel poor because I was paid very little. And I was told the saving thing would be that someday I would be so thrilled at having the civil service retirement system behind me. And sure enough, that was the explanation of why the federal government was paying me so little, that in 30 years I'd be very happy. Well, okay, I retired. Sure enough, the civil service retirement system gives me more than what I need. And so I don't have to worry about money anymore. Plus, my mom left me some land. But when people have some money, it becomes a problem in itself. I want to sell the land, but I don't want it to turn into a high density and populated area. It's in North Idaho, so there's not too much danger of that, but still, I worry about how to cut it up and how to sell it, but that keeps me entertained. Actually, what I want to say is, though most people never seem to hear me when I tell them, and I'm not sure if I would have heard it myself, but I would trade my position now to go back to when I felt poor, although I was always well fed. So when I say poor, it was partly just an illusion on my part. But to be able to have a young body again and to be able to work and to go bicycling every weekend and to run and to have a body that moves quickly, I would trade what I have for that. So those who feel in the middle age, if they feel a bit poor and put on, I might as well tell you the truth that you can either decide to like life as you go along every step, or else you're apt to find that there's always something that will make you miserable. Thank you.
Bill?
We all struggle with the blues, and certainly a flat wallet, not a fat wallet, but a flat wallet, does not necessarily help our mood out. When I walk my shift, it used to over at the apartment complex, because I hold that humans do have the gift of telepathy, but we're crappy at it. So I'd be walking and I'd get this feeling of the tension coming from people, especially during the COVID times, of how the bleep am I going to make the rent? It keeps going up. And it took a while before I realized that that wasn't me feeling that feeling, but someone else. So I managed to mentally change things around a bit. But then there was a brief period there where I felt like my life force was like grain in a burlap bag. You're always leaving little spots of grain and behind you, and you're lessening. But the thing that's been helping out lately is the idea of moving into something else. Yes, my bag is being emptied. At some point it'll be empty and I'll have some traveling to do. But until that time comes, I'm moving into a world that every day gives me a new chance at harmonies and resonances, stuff that I couldn't have caught when I was younger, or I didn't have the judgment, or I was so busy being nagged by the world in general that I didn't realize how to stop and smell the roses. I'm still broke now. I'm basically going to be living on SSA, not much in the way of formal retirement. And Biden is not helping things out with the inflation route. Actually, the world is not helping things out with the inflation route. But I'm able to still be able to stop and seize that moment, at least mentally, the one that Walt was speaking of. And so in that sense, at least to this point, I feel like I'm not as rich as I want to be, but that may just require a bit more practice in thinking about how to smell the roses. But what we're going through, it isn't a reason to completely lay down in tears. It does require some maneuvering, some tactical work, but we're still in the game. We're still in the game, and the game is worth playing. And there's such a thing as a timeout once in a while.
Thank you, Bill.
Hello again, everybody. Buongiorno, come sta? So have any of you heard about Henry George? He was a self-taught American economist, lived about 150 years ago. He was born in Philadelphia. And I kind of inherited a foundation in San Diego that was dedicated to promoting his ideas. And it was founded by General Pendleton, the Marine Corps general. And he started what was in the 1920s and so on, was very popular all across the country, single tax associations. So Henry George's idea was that we should not tax incomes. We should not tax any kind of productive activity, and that we should, he kind of, we're trying to explain the ideas of Henry George, and somebody came up, oh, he's like the Indians, because he kind of felt that, he absolutely thought that land belongs to all of us and none of us. And but we already have the practice of private property ownership, so it's too late to change that. But his solution, he felt that he found the solution to the problem of poverty. And he said the cause of poverty, one of the causes, or maybe the main cause, is the inequality in the ownership of land. So his solution to eliminating poverty was eliminating taxes on production so that you wouldn't have a disincentive to work, and also have eliminate sales tax so you wouldn't have a disincentive to have a business. And so all productive activities would not be taxed, but the rental value of land would be the source of public revenue. And it kind of works because an example of Alaska, you may know that there are 7 states that don't have state income tax, and Alaska is one of them. And they have so much revenue, mostly from oil, but it's a natural resource, that they pay you. It's about $2,000 a year they pay in August. I think this year might be 3,000. But anyway, he also had an interesting definition, a very specific definition of wealth. And he said that in basic economics, there's land, labor, and capital. And then I think he should have added entrepreneurship. But land produces rent. Labor produces wages, and capital produces interest. And those are all forms of wealth. And so in this picture, you see the guy working, that's labor, and this is the land. And then capital is this wheelbarrow. And everything in the wheelbarrow, including the wheelbarrow itself, is wealth. What do I know? Anyway, I have a copy of this if anybody wants it. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting. Anyone else would like to add their observations or comments? Anyone online, Alec? No? Okay. So thank you for your thoughts. If there are no further comments, please join us in the parish hall for further fellowship. Thank you for joining us.